If I take you about 2 decades before the start of the 20th century, there was this man called Henry Town. Henry Town is very interesting because, he was one of those very unique persons around that time. He was an engineer and he was a businessman. And there is a very famous, comment that he had made around that time. He said, there are engineers and there are businessmen, seldom both are one. Which basically means that those days there were people, different set of people who would be producing, there would be different set of people who would be
consuming or
selling and all that.
हार्वर्ड, येल, स्टैनफोर्ड, वॉर्टन, मेरा कॉलेज SPJain बॉम्बे, सर का alma mater IIM कोझिकोड, हर जगह पे एक चीज कॉमन है, that's called the case study methodology. Though it was first adopted by IIM Ahmedabad in India and then it was like all over the place. I love cases. आज मैं आपको समझाऊंगा कि जब आप टॉप बिजनेस स्कूल के अंदर MBA करते हो तो उसके अंदर किताबें बहुत कम होती हैं और केसेस ज्यादा होते हैं. वो चीज मैं नहीं समझाऊंगा. Today we've got Subhendu sir, who is the director of Indian Business School at Bangalore, who himself is the alumni of IIM कोझिकोड. Hi sir, welcome on board.
Thank you.
प्लीज सर, ये सब 20-21 ईयर ओल्ड हैं, कुछ लोग अभी MBA इस साल स्टार्ट करने वाले हैं, कुछ लोग IIM अहमदाबाद जाएंगे, कुछ लोग मेरे स्कूल पढ़ेंगे SPJain बॉम्बे, कुछ आपके alma mater में जाएंगे कोझिकोड या IBA के अंदर पढ़ रहे होंगे आपके साथ बैंगलोर के अंदर. सर प्लीज एक्सप्लेन अस व्हाट इज केस स्टडी मेथोडोलॉजी.
Okay, let me just take you back by about 200 years.
Okay.
And then I will come, forward. So somewhere around the middle of 19th century, a professor, and you would be stunned, a non-management professor was responsible for what is now the case studies.
Okay.
So there was one professor called Professor Agassiz who, through his student, through an observation exercise, created created something which was the genesis of case studies. Now, if you notice, management as an education, is something which we have seen in the 20th century. Now, if I take you about 2 decades before the start of the 20th century, there was this man called Henry Town. Henry Town is very interesting because, he was one of those very unique persons around that time. He was an engineer and he was a businessman. And there is a very famous, comment that he had made around that time. He said, there are engineers and there are businessmen, seldom both are one. Which basically means that those days there were people, different set of people who would be producing, there would be different set of people who would be
consuming or
selling and all that. And he was one of those unique, personalities who did both of those.
Okay.
And this lecture of his, many experts say that was the genesis of what we see in the, as the business classes today. So where did business, business education start from? Business education started from experience sharing by the various entrepreneurs who would come, they would take classes and students would sit, listen and learn from their experience and then go back and try it out in their own companies. Now that was the genesis of what we see in as the management education, and this one can look at it as a predecessor of case studies as well.
Yeah.
So let's say you are stuck in a dilemma. आपकी कंपनी बहुत अच्छी कर रही है, everything is fine. You're finding that your sales revenue are also going up. You're also finding somewhere that you're growing, geographically you are expanding. All that is happening. But in the last 3 years, you're finding that your profit margins have completely been reducing. So अभी आपके sales बढ़ रहे हैं, your profit is reducing. Is there a problem or is this normal?
True.
Now I live this as a situation with you.
Got it.
So आप क्या करोगे? So you will analyze all the data that is available. And how will the data be available? The data will be available through a narrative. And the narrative is again not something like what a typical storybook has. You know, it starts and then it goes in a particular way. So case studies are something where you don't have a typical flow as such.
Right.
So there will be some information, and then suddenly you will, get into something else. So for example, a typical case study would open up with a dilemma. But then you jump into what the company is all about, what the industry is all about, etc. Now, why are those important? Those are important because the company is functioning in a particular industry, so that's important.
True.
The environment is important. And then there would be a lot of data which would be given towards the end of the case study.
Yeah.
So if I now come back to the question I posed to you, what will you do? You will look at the company, you look at what it is doing, what business it is in, what kind of industry it is.
Got it.
How are the other industry players doing, etc., based on whatever is given in the case study. And then you will take those numbers which are given there, and now you will start working on where could the problem be.
Superb.
So look for those small little things which can give you enough information to base your decisions on.
Got it. I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, are these still relevant? Are they still teaching like old cases? I know Harvard is doing a lot of research on that. So I was lucky to spend some time at Harvard Business School during my executive management. I studied in Boston. Amazing time, like within less than a month's time, we did 37 odd cases. I've never studied so much ever in my life, jitna main sir wo ek mahine ke andar padh ke aaya hu. So less than a month in fact. So, but some of the cases were like old. Some of the cases were like Indian cases as well, like Fab India case. मुझे वहाँ पे जाके पढ़ाया. I didn't know about the Fab India case study back in India when I was there. I was like, bro, this is so cool. But sir, आपको क्या लगता है? Are they still relevant? Are we teaching, or are we teaching those old school methods?
Okay. Now, if you look at just the last few years, the last 3 years, 4 years, COVID and post-COVID, the entire world has changed post-COVID. Now, therefore, do I go back to the cases which were, very relevant in the early 2000s or the 90s, and bring my students to the 90s and the 2000s? Certainly, they won't be, able to relate to what the situation there was. But if I bring something which is very contemporary and then put it up into the class, they will understand it more. So cases do have their relevance, but it depends on what kind of cases one is picking up and for what context one is picking up.
So it makes me think again, industry is much more ahead of academia.
True.
Shouldn't be other way around?
Okay. Now, it's like this. Again, if you look at it, if I go back to the genesis of management education, it's industry which shared its insights, and then academia picked it up.
True.
In fact, Sumit, we talk a lot about management research, but till about the 1950s, 1960s, management research was not really looked upon as something which is adding a lot of value to the society. Unlike today, when we see that management research has got its place where it should get. So to answer your question, yes, industry and academia, they have to work together. Unfortunately, in many situations, it does not happen.
Yeah.
Now, say for example, if I look at some of my case studies, I've worked with the industries and got data from them. I worked with for one of my case studies, I worked with a company called Selco. Selco is pioneer in solar energy.
Okay.
And Selco started working on the solar energy space when the ecosystem was not there.
Got it.
I'm not the only person to have written a case on Selco. Harvard has written a case on Selco,
nice.
and Bangalore has written a wonderful case on Silco. So there are many leading institutes who have written cases on Silco. So now, what if Silco would not have shared the data with me? So I would not have been able to write that, and many readers would not have been able to get that information. So when we are talking about this collaboration, it's important that both understand, both need each other.
Right.
So if you look at all the case studies, especially all the case studies in the West, they are case studies written on real incidents that has happened in those companies.
Yeah, Steve Jobs says like you always connect the dot backwards.
Yes.
You never connect the dots forward. So I think industry has to come and give us back to the education system to generate better entrepreneurs, better managers who could be MBAs, engineers, whatever, and then they go back and take you to the next level. I think that's what General Electric, my ex-company, was able to do. Like we were founded by, I still say we because I'm close to the company, Thomas Edison, like bulb wali company were making trains, railway engines, rockets, you name it, everywhere, the solar panels, you name it, wind, power, turbines, I mean, they're all over the place. So I think they must have given back to the system, like GE has, by the GE cases, like first year you always do the GE cases as well. So I think if industry is going to lead the education system for sure, but it's the collaboration between both of the things that's going to be great. This is so amazing, sir. I can keep going. Any parting thoughts to all 20-21-year-old who are actually joining the business schools? As I said, तो कुछ लोग IBA के अंदर आपके नीचे पढ़ रहे होंगे, कुछ लोग मेरे कॉलेज जाएंगे SPJain बॉम्बे, कुछ लोग IIM अहमदाबाद जाने वाले. Any parting thoughts with young kids, sir, who are listening to us?
Oh yes, all those students who are aspiring to do their MBA or PGDM, this is one field which is exciting, which keeps changing every 6 months. You find new knowledge coming up. So one of the things I would advise the youngsters is to not to to keep studying, to keep being relevant, to keep updating themselves, and if they do that, sky is the limit. So this profession really has a lot to give to all the aspirants, and I think the current generation understands the need to do well. They're much more hungry than what we were in our times. So I wish all the youngsters all the very best. I'm sure they would really do well for themselves, for the society, and for the whole world.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for joining in, boys and girls. Do it on the like button. What do you guys think about it? Case study method में क्या आज की डेट में हमें स्टीव जॉब की केस स्टडी पढ़ने या इलियन मस्क पढ़ना चाहिए? यहाँ there are news. Mr. Modi is also going to be a case study at Harvard. That's what people say. What do you guys think? Is it relevant, or is industry going to keep leading it, or academia should lead? Academy versus industry. Comment section in the debate करते हैं. And I'll see you there. Thank you so much for joining in, sir, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do it on the like button. See you in the comments. Take care, guys. Bye bye.